Lehenengo da garrantzitsuena beti tripodearekin erabil behar zuen. Ze bestela vibrazio aldetikan jasangarria da. Garrantzitsuena da aurretikan beste dokumentalak ikustea. Audiovisualen lenguaia universala da. Eta, ez da egun baten ikasten den gauza bat, baina ideia batzuk hartu ditzazkezu.
¿Vale?
Tarjetas de estas. Vale.
Son SD.
Vale. ¿Cuántas tarjetas de esas necesito?
Muchas.
Muchas.
No, allí no creo que puedas comprar.
No creo. ¿La cámara qué tal está?
Es básica, pero te va a valer.
Para grabar vídeo, ¿eh?
Sí.
¿Sí?
Vale.
benn ci juróomi waxtu musuma raw maa ngi niroog fas buy daw te du musa raw ci yàlla xanaa gisoo ni ma sonnee ci àddina xanaa gisoo ni maa ngi ñàkk sama jëkkër gis naa ay jigéen yu am doom abandonné leen am na ñuy jot di sànni am na ñuy yàq seeni biir te dañuy delluwaat jël biir man maa ngi ci biir sëy torox te mënumaa jël biir lu tax man mënumaa am doom ci sama sëy xanaa gisoo ni maa ngi ñàkk sama jëkkër ma lay ñaan benn doom buy tax ma mën a sauver sama sëy dimbale ma yàlla sonn naa.
We've been growing tiger nuts in Valencia mainly for the production of tiger nut milk for over 1,000 years. Horchata, as it is known locally, has always been an important part of our culture. This small root vegetable has unique properties and is one of the oldest plant seeds on the planet.
Oxford to meet anthropologist Dr. Gabriel Macho.
This is a relative who lived in East Africa for about 1 million years. He was mainly subsisting on these tiger nuts.
That is your tiger nut.
That's the tiger nuts.
They must have been pretty nutritious.
It is good for you. It is high in fibers, lots of minerals, vitamins, and essential fatty acids.
With those gigantic teeth, our ancestors happily snacked on tiger nuts for over 1 million years. That is Valencia, the home of the tiger nut. Now that's an arrival, Antoni.
Yeah.
I like it. Tiger nuts!
Yeah, called chufas in Spain.
Goodness me!
We eat them raw, but basically we drink horchata, which is plant milk.
You make a drink from these dry old nuts?
Yes, we do. If you want, we can go just downstairs and I show you.
Great.
Over the past few years, tiger nuts have, after being classified as superfood, become increasingly popular both at home and abroad, creating a huge increase in demand. Superfoods are nutrient-rich foods considered highly beneficial for health. These superfoods include quinoa, goji berries, and chia seeds. Although originally consumed in organic raw food and vegetarian or vegan circles, large multinational corporations have recently started to include these in their lists of products. Today, these superfoods make up €1 billion market with a year-on-year sales growth unseen in other food products. This mass commercialization is generating complex situations. The same year the United Nations declared quinoa Food of the Year 2013, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations warned that the benefits created by increases in price and demand were not reaching those at the bottom of the production chain, the farmers that farm it.
スーパーフードの秘密。正解は海茎と呼ばれるジャガイが土の中で膨らんだものなのです。
In 2016, the tiger nut suddenly became trendy in Japan, with some of the best supermarkets in Tokyo stocking organic tiger nuts with the designation of origin Tiger Nut of Valencia label, a European certification given to assure its quality and origin. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that the tiger nuts on sale had a different aspect and were much bigger than the Valencian tiger nuts. I had them tested to verify their origin, confirming they were from Africa and not Valencia. Tiger nuts have been consumed in Africa for thousands of years, especially in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. the golden triangle of the Tigernut. Today, the increase in demand for Tigernuts is creating new farming areas that include Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. I have spent the past 15 years working in the Tigernut sector after leaving my job to set up an horchata food cart service in my city, Valencia, recovering a lost tradition of over 400 years. I prefer to work, in principle, with local Tigernuts. This is the reason the local farmers, holders of the Designation of Origin Tigernut of Valencia certification, asked me to carry out an investigation. I agreed. One of the first things I was to discover was that it was not only the Japanese who were selling African Tigernuts as if they were from Valencia, but also companies from the United States, United Kingdom, Italy, etc.
We work on the fertile land in Valencia, Spain, to ensure that our Tigernuts are the very best quality.
Entonces dice, sí, pues sus chufas son de España, de Valencia, bla 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 bla. Esa chufa es de África, no es de Valencia.
And what happens now with the chufas?
I don't know these chufas. These chufas, they don't look from Valencia. They don't look from Valencia. They are much bigger. They are much cheaper, no?
Yes, they are much cheaper. It's another price. But, I mean, they are packed in Germany. And the label is in German.
So I am like a little bit lost. They are doing something so that we cannot track this, you know?
Yeah.
I feel it is important to mention that most of the Tigernuts used by international companies come from the Valencian companies responsible for importing, over the past 2 decades, millions of kilos of Tigernuts at ridiculously low prices from Africa to Spain via the ports of Valencia and Barcelona. Once processed in Valencia, the African Tigernuts are sold as a product of Valencia in some cases and a fair trade product in others. There is, to date, no official data on the millions of kilos of Tigernuts marketed each year. The first to suffer from these bad practices are the farmers and local Tigernut crops, one of the few profitable farm crops left in Valencia. I have spent years researching Tigernuts, passing on my knowledge by talking at universities and to movements such as the slow food movement. However, this was something new. I was now on a mission to find out more about the Tigernut culture in Africa and what was really going on behind the scenes of this apparently obscure trade. I had to think long and hard about what to do next. The mysterious and dusty plains of Africa awaited. I grabbed my backpack, the one I have been using since I was 18, and began packing. 3 t-shirts, some sandals, my laptop, a tripod, camera and microphone, and I set off for Ouagadougou, capital of Burkina Faso. My African guide, Bouba, turned out to be full of surprises. At our first meeting in Ouagadougou, he informed me that a good friend of his had just arrived from Valencia. His friend Janos works as a bank clerk for 11 months of the year, but has, for the past 10 years, spent her holidays in Gawa, southern Burkina Faso, collaborating with the local people through the CIM Burkina NGO she has created. She was the one who, the next day, put me in touch with another friend of hers, Justine Siguinda, who has been exporting Tigernuts to Barcelona and Valencia for many years. I arranged to interview Justin, who told me that bad things had happened in the Burkina Tigernut industry and that it was dangerous for him and his family to talk. I spent over an hour trying to convince him before he finally agreed to be interviewed.
Yo he estudiado la agricultura. Soy técnico superior agrícola. Trabajo un poco en la chufa, en la agricultura en general. Bueno, sino entre tiempo nosotros aquí teníamos una organización mismo que se llama Oriprofis. Lo habíamos empezado con la participación del director de tecnología alimentaria de la Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona. Y estábamos organizando realmente para ver si aquí podíamos poner un precio para que los productores pudieran ganar. Pero era imposible.
¿Por qué imposible?
Imposible porque vienen Y tú sabes que África es pobre.
Sí.
Y el que tiene dinero cuando llega hace lo que quiera. Y para que estos no pueden venir a comprar como lo que querían. Esta era nuestra idea.
Ajá.
Pero bueno, lo hemos suspendido.
¿Pero por qué habéis suspendido esto?
Hubo problemas también.
I began that same night to investigate an organization called Ori Profis, considered by the World Bank, the FAO, and several NGOs to be an interregional organization of African farmers worth promoting. I was lucky enough to later interview Ventura Guamis, one of the Ori Profis promoters.
Con los productores de Mali, Níger y Burkina, hablamos de la posibilidad de crear una gran cooperativa con empresas que comprarían las chufas aquí en España a un precio justo, y aquello pareció que podía funcionar. El problema fue que con el tiempo hubo una presión de intereses que en este momento pues aparecían en medios de comunicación como grandes mecenas y grandes ONGs, cuando en realidad pues buscaban el negocio y buscaban implantar un sistema de control.
¿Me puedes decir por favor con quién trabajabas en Valencia?
Bueno, no quería decir el nombre. Yo tengo una revista se proclama en España que él es rey de qué conquista.
El emperador de la chufa.
Justin had inadvertently let the cat out of the bag. Ventura Guamis explained that one of the most widely read Spanish newspapers, El País, had published a full-page article on Sunday, 3rd of June 2007, titled The Tigernut Emperor, an article that told the story of Daniel and Ramon Carrion, owners of the Valencian company Tigernut Traders, a company that holds a virtual world monopoly on tiger nuts. El País and other media mentioned the humanitarian work carried out by the Tigernut traders in Africa, who claimed they were responsible for providing some 4,000 African women with a decent job.
Y luego, uno de estos grandes compradores de chufa en Valencia se fue a Mali y allí han tenido problemas con la justicia porque bloquearon más de 4 o 5 contenedores que no han pagado a los agricultores y ya no iba a Mali. Pero luego ha contactado el Ministerio de Agricultura de aquí, que quería venir a trabajar. ¿Sabes? Que quería trabajar y crear mucha riqueza, muchos empleos para la población.
I carried on with my investigation that night and found several articles dating back to 2003 and 2004 denouncing a massive alleged international fraud by a Spanish company called RCA Records, which had, in a breach of contract, refused to purchase the crops produced by more than 8,000 Malian families. The Malian media revealed that some seemingly forged documentation issued by the Port of Barcelona authorities had prompted Spain and the European Union to issue a health alert prohibiting the entry of tiger nuts from Mali due to an excess of aflatoxins, considered a dangerous health hazard. They point the finger at RCA Records as the company responsible for the scam. I continued to dig and finally got my hands on the company's financial records, where I found that the owners of RCA Records were also the owners of Tigernut Traders. It was 3 a.m. and time to sleep, as I had an appointment the next day with Ruffin Toe, the Tigernut milk producer from Ouagadougou. My meeting with Ruffin turned out to be an unforgettable experience. He is an economist who had studied in France, but gave up everything to devote himself to the passion his mother shared with him as a child, tigernut milk. Ruffin showed me how he made tigernut milk and told me how his family distributed the milk to restaurants around the city on motorcycles. He talked about his research on tigernut milk in France, told me how he chose not to pasteurize the milk because of its nutritional quality and taste change. We talked for hours on end about life, tigernuts and tigernut milk.
Présentement, il y avait le groupement qui faisait le sushi. Mais après, ça n'a plus marché.
Pourquoi?
Parce que tout simplement, le prix auquel on achetait le sushi de la table Présentement, c'est la récolte. Il y avait un Espagnol à Togo, c'est qui l'exporte. Il l'achète, le sushi. Il dit c'est pas bon.
C'est pas bon.
C'est not
An article published in the Burkina Faso L'Observateur in 2007 reported how the Spanish company Tigernut Traders came to an agreement with the Minister of Agriculture, Salif Diallo, that guaranteed, for an agreed price, the purchase of the entire Tigernut crop production. According to Justin and Ruffin, the agreement ended badly. I had only been in Burkina for 3 days and the plot had thickened. Our next stop was Banfora, a region bordering Sikasso, considered the most important Tigernut production area in Burkina Faso. 2 of Buba's friends had located the Tigernut fields for us. After hours of winding sandy tracks, we eventually arrived at a small village that doesn't even appear on Google Maps. Here we met up with Suleiman, head of a large farming family with over 50 members.
Bon, moi d'autres maintenant qu'à fort, mais à mana à terminer comme à autre maintenant tout na qu'à fort asira sangi sawan bi ko binena kana na barake nanye mais depuis l'on bi amana o binena sanga ta jama warale.
We moved on to the next village where we met some farmers who were still growing tiger nuts. Fayama Basapemba is a small farmer who works the land with his family, producing tiger nuts for the national market. He told us he was not interested in the international market since the prices offered were not as good as the ones he got locally. We interviewed his family.
Okay. Ito ko di.
Comme si ça me barraque ni tel ni temeni bon ni temeni ma la blancanya ni ma fati bi ka ante ma tamorate nambure
T'as piqué le scorpion? Toi? T'as piqué? Toi? Pourquoi?
2 fois.
2 fois?
3 fois.
3 fois. Tout elle a piqué le scorpion.
La terre. Ambassadeur ni panugole yedro. La terre. Tarasa amejisi kako. Kasoro ka demsa nuko. Kasoro ka daga sitara. Dada na amina kadi.
Ya ibina kadi si bansan.
Tese ka si bansan sina alufana na kwa ka fa so boy. Ima fanu ya. Fanu nogara. Ma kemel flani ni tara safinesa. Kusia ni ara tna se ka ta flasa ngadi ma fane ba ku. No one me boy fun. Ni ka fanu do. Lo mina bi na wa lo ntawara.
Ya ni che chama eh.
Che. Ibi jija kan dembe.
Il faut penser à eux. Il faut penser à eux.
Ambisini!
As it grows dark, a black veil covers an Africa as plundered as my soul. No one had ever come to offer these families an education, healthcare, or decent price for their crops, in spite of the claims Tigernut Traders makes on its website, claims its international clients believe. I was overwhelmed by images of African tiger nuts stacked on the shelves of the American Whole Foods market, being sold at $24 a kilo after being purchased in Africa for around 40 cents. Or the supermarkets of Japan, Germany, Sweden, the UK, France, Italy, etc. I cannot help thinking of all the Spanish companies that use or have used African tiger nuts to produce their industrial tiger nut milk, consumed by a public who believes it is made with tiger nuts from Valencia in some cases, and with fair trade products in others. we left for Gaoua, on the border of Ghana and the Ivory Coast, home of Buba and the Lobi ethnic group, and the headquarters of my heroine, Janos, and the NGO Sansana School. I woke up in the Hala Hotel, the same hotel the owners of Tigernut traders had used on 3 different occasions during 2007. One of Buba's friends, who had worked as the Tigernut traders' chauffeur, drew up a map of the exact location of the fields where hundreds of families had planted Tigernuts for them. The families are from Loropeni, located in the Kingdom of Gan. After an hour and a half on a very bumpy road, we arrived at a small village. Buba asked me to stay in the car while he went to speak to someone. Thanks to Carry-On, white people are no longer welcome here. We are told the head of the local council was at work in the fields. After a bit of a trek, we finally managed to find, at the foot of a large pile of corn cobs, part of the family of Kenele, a bony old man who kept looking at me out of the corner of his eye as he spoke with Buba. Kenele made his way towards me, even though he no longer trusted white people. I was soon to find out why.
amaka comme le vital awi yoro ndia mawo fa ba ke donc sisa tuba ken mana to ni kama donc muso ntan pise ka bo donc ay yoro dar sisa ukana senete kiama katana
an koma shida katana yi ako drobe
bon comme o be o ka kiani o bon calculer ni tere mo ko na ni ko ko be se ka ba me afefe ko ni ko ne avena carne ko soro fa lo ngere ni wala uru beta ko nan soro sama ke comme to ma ke ran ta ko
anti
ebe yoro dima me dum da ni
Pardon, qu'est-ce que le blanc il a fait? Pardon. Tous les tours avant nous sommes comme ça.
Comment Ikamiri Kodora ko alebi fudara tuwabun kamini kirani amadi ale comment ibna na yokofe mune mnana
ayeba koga
batu ya ba
ko tuwabu.
I became fascinated by the immensity of the former Tigernut fields, now used for growing corn. No matter how hard I tried, I could not fathom why there were Western companies that would behave this way. Is this the example we give Africa? Africa, provider of cocoa, coffee, ivory, and minerals such as gold, diamonds, and coltan. A continent systematically plundered in spite of the international trade regulations in force. Kenele's wife insisted on giving me some tiger nuts and showing me how they make the flour. We concluded our visit and quickly made our way across the savannah to meet up with the king of the Gan.
Récolter à la main, vous savez, c'est très difficile. Voilà, c'est pourquoi les gens se sacrifient, non, et le revenu est vraiment faible pour les femmes. Voilà, c'est les collecteurs qui viennent, qui leur imposent leur prix. Elles sont obligées d'accepter, malgré, parce que ça ne les convient, mais où aller vendre. Mais quand c'est dit, vu tout ce que vous allez investir, par exemple, vous allez demander à la population pour venir vous aider à récolter, il faut les donner à manger, à boire. On ne peut pas le faire travailler quelqu'un avec la faim. Et tout ça, ce sont des dépenses. Pour cultiver, il faut vraiment, ça fait des dépenses. Après, maintenant, si vous n'avez pas de revenus, vous voyez tellement que c'est dur. Mais si, comme c'est dur aussi, nous voulons qu'il y ait vraiment un prix qui peut vraiment nous aider à pouvoir aller en avant.
It was dark by the time we arrived back at the Hala Hotel, where I met up with Janos. She had also just arrived after a very long day at the Gawa Women's Association, time to catch up on each other's news. Before finishing, we made a backup copy of everything that had been recorded. Promises are meant to be kept. I had previously promised Fernando Alonso, president of the NGO Sansana School, who introduced me to Buba, that I would do a photographic report of the work they were carrying out in the area. We left Gaoua to visit the Sansana, Holi and Nyonyo villages. Buba kept egging me on, so in addition to taking photos, I also began interviewing anyone that was willing to be interviewed. Students, teachers, school directors, women's association members. I had gone from hell to the Garden of Eden. The courage of people like Janos and the work carried out at the Sansana school in this forgotten corner of the world did not fail to amaze me. I found myself becoming deeply moved as I watched the children studying instead of having to work in the Tigernut fields or gold mines. While I filmed, I was told that 3 children had been kidnapped from a nearby village and taken across the border to the Ivory Coast, where they were more than likely taken to work as slaves on some cocoa plantation. We arranged to meet with Mr. Sommet, technical manager of the Ministry of Agriculture from 2003 to 2008.
Le sujet dont le lancement de la promotion a été fait à l'Europénie en juin 2007. M. Carrier avait un représentant national et ils avaient promis, ils avaient dit qu'ils avaient toutes les ressources pour pouvoir acheter l'ensemble de la production. À l'arrivée, ce prix d'abord n'a pas été respecté et à l'achat, non mais il n'y a même pas eu d'achat. Nous avons appris par la suite qu'ils ont racheté certaines quantités dans certains villages, dans certaines communes, en cachette. Celui qui est venu du Mali était porteur de cette lettre et pour qu'on l'arrête et qu'on l'interne. On a réussi à le faire arrêter, enfin, il a été arrêté et à la gendarmerie. Ce qui fait que notre gouvernement à son temps avait demandé qu'on le laisse partir et que le Mali puisse intenter un procès contre lui à travers la police Interpol. Nous avons été obligés, pour ne pas créer des problèmes entre nous et l'Espagne, de l'accompagner pour qu'il s'en aille du Burkina. Cette phase de commercialisation a été un choc pour nous, pour notre pays.
I suddenly remembered something key that I had not noticed in my first interview.
Hubo una ceremonia hace poco tiempo de uno de los reyes de aquí.
¿Uno de los tantos reyes que hay?
¿Hay reyes aquí?
Sí, hay reyes.
¿En serio?
Hay muchos reyes, hay grandes y pequeños, medianos, pequeños.
María, ponte aquí. Estás aquí en un proyecto de cooperación, ¿no? Entonces, tú estás aquí desde hace unos meses para el proyecto este y hace un mes, ¿no? Acompañas a Yusten, que a Yusten le dicen que hay un tema de que van a anunciar a bombo y platillo.
La fiesta de los chavales. Fue una casualidad, ¿no?
Fue una casualidad. Vale, pues cuéntame esa casualidad.
Bueno, pues eso, pues era una fiesta, era el rey de una cierta comuna, ¿no? Es una comuna. Y pues eso, él como está en el tema de la agricultura, sí, quería empezar a tratar el sushi, ¿no? Este cultivo. Quería empezar con este cultivo. Entonces estaban ahí todos los agricultores, gente también importante, gente muy distinta.
Diputados, el rey, porque yo quiero empezar a lanzar para que la gente cultiva en esta zona, porque hay señor Carrión que ha dicho que quiere comprar 100 toneladas o 200 toneladas.
In 2016, Tigernut traders returned to Burkina, this time to the north, where they signed up hundreds of families to farm Tigernuts for them from August 2017 on. Why a return to Burkina, especially since they already controlled a large part of the world Tigernut trade thanks to their hold on the Tigernut industry in Niger? We managed to meet up with a Tigernut agent in Niger, who unfortunately refused to speak on camera. However, the conversation we had with him was enough to complete the unfinished puzzle. Sometimes, even when the answer is right in front of us, we do not see it. In less than 5 years, Boko Haram and other fundamentalist organizations had extended their control in the Sahel region. Unofficially declared wars were producing a direct confrontation between these branches of Daesh and the African states. Tigernut traders had not expected the Tigernut production areas, Maradi and Zarmaganda in Niger, to fall under the partial control of Boko Haram, who, according to the agent we interviewed and the investigations of journalists from the Washington Post, is financed by taxing any product that is transported through the areas under its control. Back at the hotel, Buba didn't let me rest for a minute. He had become obsessed with Mali, where in 2002, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, tigernuts had become the country's 4th largest export product. After more than 10 telephone calls, Buba finally managed to contact Alassane Diarra, a journalist for over a decade at the Mali newspaper, L'Indépendant. It turned out that Mr. Diarra was ready to travel 500 kilometers from Bamako, the capital of Mali, to a meeting point in southeastern Mali to bring us key documentation regarding the investigation he had carried out on this alleged scam. Several Westerners had been abducted in this area since Toubabs, the name given to white people here, were persons of interest for highwaymen and jihadists. We decided to take extra care. We set off for Mali. After 100 kilometers, the car started playing up. We didn't get to the Sahel border control until 5:15 in the afternoon. We quickly made our way to Kotiala. We checked into the hotel where we had arranged to meet Mr. Diarra the next day. We decided it was better for me to keep a low profile. We found out just 2 weeks later that a Franciscan nun had been abducted in the same town. We had dinner and prepared for the interview.
Une dizaine d'années, quand j'étais journaliste au quotidien d'information L'Indépendant du Mali, j'ai eu à mener des investigations sur l'exportation du pois sucré en Europe, notamment en Espagne. Et la preuve qu'il y a un réseau mafieux qui tourne autour de ça, que les paysans maliens, burkinabés, nigériens sont à la limite escroqués par des individus mal intentionnés. Il s'est trouvé que la société espagnole a menti sur toute la ligne en disant que le pois sucré malien qui contient des éléments toxiques. Dans le dossier, il a apparu un certain Ramon Cario. Donc, il avait été poursuivi pour escroquerie. Il a été interpellé par la justice pour qu'il avait cette pratique et digne d'autres époques. Est semblable à une recolonisation. Moi, cela n'est pas admissible et cela à la limite est même criminel.
Mr. Diarra provided us with some very interesting documentation. It included an international search and arrest warrant issued on 16th January 2009 by a Malian court against the Carrions, owners of Tigernut traders, for the fraud, mass swindle and documentary forgery that had left more than 8,000 families in despair. He also gave us another warrant, this one older and no longer in force, against Juan Gomez and Emilio Peña, members of the company Emilio Peña S.A., who it seems were known as the Spaniards of Bobo. That same day we made our way to the cradle of the Tigernut industry in Mali, a place called Sikasso. We called the director of the local Chamber of Agriculture, Mr. Sibiri, who told us that he had been a witness to the alleged scam, but he was not willing to talk, claiming that it was too dangerous. We asked him to please reconsider. It was 9 a.m. the next day, and we were just about to return to Burkina when Mr. Sibiri suddenly appeared with the president of the Tigernut Cooperative of Mali, Siaka Sanogo. It seemed he had reconsidered our request for further information. They took us to a field of tiger nuts where they told the farmers why we were there.
On est sur le pois sucré. C'est une passion pour nous, puisque nos grands-parents, nos parents, nous on est nés dans le pois sucré et on veut rester dans le pois sucré, même si c'est pas rentable.
Pourquoi ce n'est pas rentable? Parce qu'à l'Europe, à l'Amérique, maintenant, le pois sucré, c'est beaucoup de fashion. Et beaucoup de gens commencent à manger le pois sucré et c'est très cher.
On a fait un recensement. Les producteurs de pois sucrés ont été à 32 000 pour donner le produit, pour faire des mariages, pour traiter des personnes. Tout ça, c'est gâté. Travailler avec Carillon. L'injustice, ça.
C'est l'injustice.
Ah oui, ça c'est clair.
Il y a eu un problème intervenu entre Mousso et son partenaire espagnol. Carillon, vraiment Carillon, qui est venu. Carillon est venu danser les balafons ici.
Tu les connais, Carillon, personnellement?
Très bien, il est venu danser les balafons ici chez moi. Pendant une nuit, ils étaient 3, Carillon, Emilio, et puis Mo. Fonso, comme ça fait plus de 5 ans, 6 ans, il est avec les Espagnols, il a connu beaucoup d'industriels. Il travaille directement avec l'industrie, pas avec les Carillons. Et Carillon, qu'est-ce qu'il a fait? Maintenant, il s'est arrangé à aller coller un problème d'alerte rouge. Quand on est arrivé à Abidjan, on a trouvé que le même numéro de plomb qui avait fermé le conteneur, ce même numéro a quitté Barcelone pour revenir à Abidjan. Dire que ça a été de l'escroquerie.
According to Mr. Sibiri in Mali and Mr. Some in Burkina Faso, this Spanish company was taking advantage of the chaos and overstocking to later buy the tiger nuts at a reduced price. The strategy of this company has, over the past 20 years, been to send agents to the most remote villages full of poor people who they know will not denounce them. They ask the villagers to produce large crops of tiger nuts using the respect their European company status imposes, and then only buy from those willing to sell at an inferior price. But there were still too many loose ends. If what Mr. Sibiri said was true, why had the Spanish and European health authorities not cottoned on? We decided we had to find the tiger nut trader's previous agent, Ousmane Sow. After a lot of effort, we managed to track him down and arrange a meeting in Bamako. In 1998, Ousmane was responsible for organizing thousands of cooperatives in Mali and Burkina Faso. It turned out that he was also responsible for establishing, together with Mr. Bokoum, head of the National Agricultural Development Bank in Sikasso, a system of microcredits for thousands of farming families, as well as a crop and rotation calendar, a transport system for the compost used to fertilize the fields, irrigation, basic agricultural tools. But, more importantly, a price had been agreed of approximately 40 cents per kilo, more than twice the 15 cents farming families were paid at the time, an amount that did not even cover the families' production costs. Once the Tigernut sector had been reorganized into cooperatives and with the institutional support of both the Mali Chambers of Commerce and Agriculture, Ousmane decided to travel to Spain. In Spain, he met up with two important Tigernut importers, explaining that the sector had recently been reorganized into cooperatives. The importers had no choice but to accept the newly created cooperatives or lose the African Tigernut crops. Contracts were signed agreeing to buy 10 containers a week during the harvest season, a total of over 2 million kilos of Tigernuts. Some 8,000 families immediately began working to meet the terms of the contracts. It soon became clear that the real aim of these companies was to control and prevent initiatives such as those created by Ousmane and Ori Profis from succeeding. Africa organizing its own fair trade industry. A nightmare had just begun for Ousmane and the African families he represented. In 2002, 10 containers with a total of almost 200 tons of Malian Tigernuts left the port of Abidjan on the Ivory Coast, since Mali is a landlocked country, bound for the port of Barcelona. In a flagrant breach of contract, one of the companies, EPSA SA, decided to accept only 4 of the 10 containers shipped. These 4 containers went through customs without a hitch. The other 6 containers were registered in the name of RCA Records. 2 Barcelona Port Health Authority inspection documents dated 3rd of May 2002 were issued requesting a test for aflatoxins for the 6 remaining containers. The test results confirmed a total 22% aflatoxin content. The 6 containers were held up in the port of Barcelona. We decided we had to examine these documents. This is what we found. The first document was for 4 containers with a total cargo of 60 tons of Tigernuts, while the second document was for the remaining 2 containers with a total cargo of almost 40 tons of Tigernuts. Both documents appeared handwritten by the same person on the same day. However, the surname of the representative on the first document was Rivera with an O and V, while the second document was made out in the name of Rubira with a U and a B. The identity card numbers on the documents were different, making it impossible to know if Rovira and Rubira were the same person. The name of the export company of Ousmane and the cooperatives he represented was Centre International pour le Commerce, while on the inspection document it was Centre International pour la France. The only test requested had been for aflatoxins. It is highly significant that this should be requested when, according to the Spanish Agency for Food Safety and Nutrition, AESAN, and the European Commission itself, aflatoxins had never before been detected in African Tigernut imports. The most surprising thing of all was that neither of the 2 inspection documents specified the container number from which the samples had been taken, nor the number of the container seal. For those of us who, like myself, are not aware of how maritime transport works, each container is sealed with a unique seal that can only be removed by the port authorities. An expert with more than 30 years of experience working in Spanish ports told us that we could compare these 2 inspection documents to traffic fines that did not include the registration number of the car, the name of the owner, or even the name or badge number of the police officers. Completely irregular. A health alert related to these inspection documents was issued by the Ministry of Health on the Tigernuts of Ousmane and the cooperatives he represented. Out of the 10 original containers, 6 were eventually returned to Abidjan, while the other 4 remained in Spain, having been cleared by customs. Ousmane and the farmers' cooperatives hired SGS, an important Swiss multinational that provides inspection, verification, testing and certification services. SGS opened the 6 containers in the presence of Jean-Charles Sampson, head of Maersk, in whose containers the Tigernuts had been shipped.
Maintenant, cette fois-ci, je demande le connaissement aller comme retour. Le document pour ces 6 conteneurs. J'ai rendu compte, les numéros de plomb sont les mêmes. Donc ça montre aisément que le conteneur n'a pas été ouvert, plus forte raison que l'analyse de leur contenu. Arrivé au port d'Abidjan, comme je travaille en partenariat avec les coopératifs et l'administration, et j'ai demandé le président de l'ensemble des camarades de commerce et les camarades d'agriculture, les coopératifs, qu'on aille à Abidjan pour constater Arrivé sur place, on a commis un expert qui est l'EGS. On a réceptionné les conteneurs avec l'autorité d'Abidjan, port d'Abidjan et Max-Line. Donc on a prélevé des conteneurs, on a prélevé l'échantillon de tous les conteneurs sur le 6. l'EGS a donné un résultat aflatoxine 0 tous les 6.
On the 19th of September 2002, a month after the containers had been returned to Abidjan, a civil war broke out on the Ivory Coast. The 6 containers remained stuck in the port. A year later, in 2003, Spain experienced one of the worst heat waves in recent history. The demand for horchata hit the roof, producing a scarcity of Tigernuts.
Et c'est les carrions encore qui m'appellent de niveau, ils me disent « Ah, Ousmane, va voir au port s'il y a les conteneurs qui étaient là-bas, je suis intéressé. » J'ai dit, comment tu es intéressé le conteneur à flatter? Il dit, ce n'est pas ton problème. Tu ouvres, s'il n'y a pas des insectes, et si ça peut aller, tu me l'envoies.
Ousmane refused to sell and contacted a Catalan company, Multi Products SL. But Ousmane Sao no longer trusted the Spanish and demanded a new set of conditions.
Lopez Multi Products. Moi-même, je serai là-bas. Ensemble, on va faire l'analyse sur place. Si c'est avéré que cette aflatoxine existe, le produit est de moi. S'il n'y a pas d'aflatoxine, qu'il paye. Donc, il m'a autorisé de le faire et je l'ai envoyé les choufas.
The same Tigernuts that had been shipped to Barcelona in 2002 and sent back were repacked into 5 new Maersk containers and shipped back to Spain in a game of cat and mouse.
Arrivé au port de Barcelone, on a commis l'expert comme prévu, qui a prélevé l'échantillon devant moi et lui. Donc, on l'a demandé qu'il envoie sur les 2 laboratoires. Un laboratoire à Barcelone et un autre à Madrid. PP Plus et Anebiol. SL. Donc les résultats sont venus, sont confirmés les résultats d'Abidjan, aflatoxine 0. L'accord que j'avais avec Multiproduits, et déjà, moi j'ai fait ma part de l'accord, ça doit rester de me payer, donc il n'a pas respecté cet engagement. Et Multiproduits n'a pas voulu.
Ousmane discovered he had been tricked again. It turned out that Multi-Products SL was an ally of Tigernut traders, and that their real aim was to get the Tigernuts for next to nothing and ruin Ousmane. Ousmane decided to get Maersk to transfer the 5 containers from Barcelona to Valencia since he was being charged for storage. He then got in touch with the largest Tigernut dealers in Valencia.
Ils n'ont pas voulu. Il dit qu'il veut, mais il ne peut pas acheter parce que Carrion est là en train de les ménager.
Ousmane received a call.
Si tu veux faire des paysans ou de l'argent. Si tu veux de l'argent, on va gagner de l'argent. Si tu veux des paysans, il faut aller avec les paysans.
This is the exact method used to corrupt African leaders by those who had plundered Africa during the period of colonialism. It looked as if we were up against a movement of neocolonialism. He continued to refuse to sell the Tigernuts. By now, he had spent almost 3 months in Spain on a trip that should have only lasted a week. Out of the blue, the 5 containers located in the port of Valencia became the subject of a new health alert, this time issued in Madrid. It should be noted that this was the only Tigernut health alert mentioned by the Spanish Agency of Food Safety and Nutrition, AESAN, in its 2004 report to the European Commission. These were the same Tigernuts that had received a health alert 2 years earlier in Barcelona, and which, according to independent tests, showed no sign of aflatoxins.
Lundi matin, c'est le carrion qui m'appelle, au premier heure. Il m'a dit que désolé pour le Mali, désolé pour le Burkina, il y a eu la lettre rouge sur ton produit. Le matin, moi, on s'est rendu aux portes, avant le responsable de sanitaire, et il dit effectivement, il a reçu le même soir l'alerte provenant de Madrid, mais lui-même, il est étonné. S'il y a l'anomalie sur le produit, c'est lui qui doit avertir le Madrid, mais pas le Madrid lui informer sur l'alerte. Donc lui-même, il reconnaît que c'était une fausse alerte. Mais comme c'est le ministère, il ne peut rien faire.
Ousmane is warned by an important Tigernut milk producer.
Que je le vends le carrion à prix qu'il veut et que je n'ai qu'à même faire attention de vraiment chercher une solution de coopérer avec lui. Sinon, je risque même de ma vie, selon lui. Aussi, mon visa était fini. J'ai prolongé 2 fois, mais j'avais plus de possibilité encore de le prolonger. Ok, donc il est venu, on a fait un accord, il a payé 3600, il me l'a donné 3000, il a fait le papier. J'ai pris l'avion et je suis parti au Mali.
Surprisingly, the container left the port with a clean bill of health.
Donc là, je n'ai plus aucune des nouvelles des 4 conteneurs restants. C'était resté à la fois.
The 4 remaining containers, with a total of 80 tons of tiger nuts collected by women, children and men working a minimum of 12 hours a day in temperatures of over 40 degrees centigrade, were transferred from multi-products to RCA Records. Ousmane Sow was never able to find out what happened to the remaining 4 containers. While flying back to Mali, all Ousmane could think about was how he was going to tell thousands of families why, once again, they were not going to be paid for their crops. The health warnings destroyed the tiger nut sector in Mali, a sector that had created cooperatives as a way of defending their workers' most basic rights. During his visit to Bamako in 2005, Miguel Ángel Moratinos, the Foreign Secretary of the Spanish government, received a dossier from a number of Malinese ministers informing him that the health alerts were irrefutably false. One piece of evidence is the bill of lading of the shipping company Maersk concerning the 6 containers that sailed from Abidjan to Barcelona in 2002, for which the first health alert was declared. The bill of lading is the shipping transport's guarantor for any kind of merchandise. These are the numbers for each of the containers on the way from Abidjan to Barcelona. And these are the numbers corresponding to the single-use seals with which every container was closed. This is the bill of lading for these containers when they were returned from Barcelona to Abidjan, with the exact same container numbers and seal numbers. As explained by Ousmane Sow, the containers were never opened in Barcelona, and no aflatoxins analysis was ever conducted on the cooperative's tiger nuts. The Spanish government had been informed with these very same documents that the alerts were false. It did nothing. Millions of people in Africa have suffered, and still do, from the consequences of this collusion between European companies and insensitive politicians who facilitate these exploitative commercial practices. We hope that the Spanish government and the European Commission will put things right regarding these health alerts, as precedents exist in which they have been a lot more diligent.
El gobierno confía en que hoy en Europa se levante la alerta sanitaria a los pepinos españoles.
El pasado jueves, Alemania hacía públicas sus sospechas de que pepinos procedentes de España eran el origen de las infecciones por la bacteria E. coli. Entonces, Bruselas activó la alerta sanitaria sobre estos productos. Menos de una semana después, la ha retirado. Y es que todos los análisis a las hortalizas procedentes de nuestro país han dado negativo.
Y, por supuesto, exigir, como vamos a hacer, la reparación del daño causado ante las instancias que procedan.
Una ayuda de hasta 150 millones de euros para los productores afectados por la caída de ventas.
We contacted the Barcelona Port Health Authority and Spanish Ministry of Health in Madrid to clarify what was behind these health alerts, but to date have received no reply. Mr. Babalae Dao, President of the Transport Council, under the supervision of the Mali Ministry of Transport and Export, told us the health alert had affected his country negatively.
Parce que c'était un produit d'exportation phare pour notre pays. Il était devenu pratiquement 3e, sinon en 4e position dans les produits d'exportation de notre pays, qui n'en compte pas beaucoup, qui permettait à ces familles-là de s'équilibrer et aussi d'équilibrer quelque peu notre balance commerciale. Ce problème qui est posé aujourd'hui, qui a handicapé le Mali et d'une façon générale tous ces paysans-là, a des conséquences énormes. C'est un produit qui crée de l'emploi pour plus de 3,5 millions de personnes qui vivent du coton. Mais parce que le coton, lui, tout seul ne suffit pas, il y avait à côté ce poids sucre. Tout ça du jour au lendemain, malheureusement, avec ce qu'il y a eu, nous sommes trouvés handicapés de cela. Et c'est une perte des plus énormes pour nous.
Quand vous voyez aujourd'hui, il y a des bagarres partout, parce qu'il y a trop d'injustice. S'il y a la justice, tout fonctionne. S'il n'y a pas de justice, c'est très grave. Et c'est ce qui est en train de passer aujourd'hui.
After landing in Europe in total shock, the first thing I did was to talk to the Tigernut farmers in Valencia. They told me that Tigernut traders had recently applied for a designation of origin Tigernut of Valencia certificate, and that they had important institutional support, much to the amazement and anger of the farmers. I spent the following few months writing my script and editing the 100 hours of film while continuing to investigate. In February, we decided to visit the world's leading trade fair for organic food, BioFach, in Nuremberg, Germany. Germany is considered one of the most eco-friendly countries, where even McDonald's has its own bio menu. Important organic companies were presenting a variety of new Tigernut products such as muesli, cream, flour, vegetable milk, and even cosmetics. These companies all use African Tigernuts, and although the packaging is labeled bio, none have a fair trade label. Ecological, biological, or organic are all alternative words used to describe products produced by organic farming. Organic farmers do not use chemical fertilizers or genetically modified seeds, and are known for respecting the natural cycles of the earth. On the other hand, fair trade means that those who farm, who sew our clothes, or assemble our favorite devices receive a decent wage. But back to BioFach. Govinda, a customer of Tigernut traders, uses its flyers to try and convince customers that they will be helping poor African children if they buy their Tigernuts.
El papel de los importadores en las alertas sanitarias que hubo en 2002 y en 2004 fue bastante limitado, porque obviamente cuando quieres importar no pides un producto que venga con micotoxinas. Ciertamente las aduanas y los sistemas sanitarios de las aduanas hicieron su trabajo correctamente, como siempre. La mercancía no llegó a salir del puerto, se volvió a su país y allí se destruyó.
Es un acta en la que, del 3 de mayo del 2002, en la que vosotros sois los importadores, RCA Records, ¿no?
Puede ser que la recibamos, pero realmente no guardamos una documentación de esto que tiene más de 15 años.
Vale.
Perdón.
Buenas.
Que estamos grabando.
Por lo cual, según estas fuentes, no fue destruida la chufa y se volvió a mandar a España un año después y todos los análisis salieron negativos en aflatoxinas. Y queríamos preguntaros a ver, porque es que es difícil de entender, ¿no?
Luego te voy a contar yo la película completa para que te enteres, porque te veo desituado. A ti o a quien te apadrine en este caso. No tenéis ni puta idea. Está grabado eso, pero la palabra ni puta idea. Vale. Ni puta idea.
Vale, bueno, pues...
yo no sé quién os ha conducido aquí, a esta casa, que es la casa más seria de chufas que hay en España y en el mundo.
Adelantado, Ramón, mandé las preguntas por adelantado, os solicité la entrevista, pusisteis una serie de condiciones, las he aceptado todas.
Pero eso yo cuando se lo dije a Daniel, le dije, digo, el chico este, que no se veía, tú, quien fuera que viniera, digo, parece más un redactor del Hola, del noticiario del Corazón o del Lecturas, que de algo serio, como es hablar de chufa.
Vamos a hablar del...
Sin morreos de cantamañanas, chiquilicuates, gente que no tiene pronunciamiento de ningún tipo, yo aquí no lo admito, porque he perdido mucho dinero en África con mangantes, con historiantes. Y cuando te he oído tus casareos, un desgraciado de Malí o un desgraciado de Burkina ha dicho, me quejo porque me decían que me van a comprar 1 kilo. Cuando nosotros compramos millones de kilos. Además, el gobierno de España ha venido con nosotros, nos ha invitado a ir en su avión oficial.
¿Quién?
El gobierno de España.
Sí.
El gobierno de España nos ha llamado para que le acompañemos en un viaje oficial a Níger para ver lo que hacemos nosotros allí con las chufas, que es humanidad.
On a réussi à le faire arrêter, enfin, il a été arrêté à la gendarmerie. Nous avons été obligés, pour ne pas créer des problèmes entre nous et l'Espagne, de l'accompagner pour qu'il s'en aille du Burkina.
Humanidad. ¿Vale?
Aquí hay una orden de búsqueda y captura internacional emitida por el gobierno de Mali contra ti. En el año 2009 salió en todos los medios de comunicación de Mali.
Mira, si estamos en el chismorreo ese, es decir, es que yo me río de eso. Eso no tiene ninguna sostenibilidad. Nadie se lo cree. Y te digo, olvídate de eso, digan lo que quieran los que están rabiando. ¿Sabes quién rabia? Todo el mundo, que no seamos nosotros. Todos los demás, el mundo entero, es el mundo relacionado con las chufas. Todo el mundo relacionado con las chufas rabia. Porque nosotros estamos en el éxito y ellos no están.
La orden de búsqueda y captura oficial, igual que supuestamente en 2007 parece que estuviste una noche en la gendarmería en Ouagadougou.
Vamos a ver, ¿quién te ha contado a ti eso? Blaise Compaoré, presidente en ese momento de Burkina Faso.
No he conocido.
Ali Diallo, ministro de Agricultura.
No he conocido.
O cualquier feriantillo de los que van a Liria en San Miguel a vender 4 chufas.
Ramón,
¿quién te lo ha contado?
No me lo ha contado ninguno de los que estás diciendo. Fíjate, ninguno, ni les conozco. No conozco, yo no trato a esos niveles.
Por lo tanto, mira, te voy a decir una cosa. ¿Te llamas cómo?
Andoni.
Vale. Yo tengo mucha energía.
Sí,
¿vale?
ya lo veo.
Tengo 66 años y tengo energía combativa. No tengo por qué defenderme de ningún chiquilicuatre que me diga cualquier cosa por ahí. Nosotros somos los más poderosos.
Yo no te lo niego, Ramón. Yo solamente estoy tratando de entender.
Mira, te repito lo que te he dicho antes. Y además en esto es que voy a ser casi un monólogo. Te repito lo que te he dicho antes. Nosotros compramos más chufa que nadie. ¿Queda claro ese? Dilo 2 veces.
En 2004 tú firmaste, te pregunto, ¿firmaste tú este papel en el que comprabas un contenedor de los contenedores que supuestamente tenían aflatoxinas? Porque esa es tu firma.
No, esa es mi firma.
Pregunto.
Esa es mi firma. Yo te digo la realidad de las cosas, aunque sea, digamos, de la literatura barata. Eso pertenece ya a la literatura barata.
Pero una pregunta, ¿cómo es posible que compres un contenedor que tiene, al cual se le ha decretado una alerta por aflatoxinas?
No.
¿Ah, no?
Vamos a ver.
¿Sí o no? Me acabas de decir que sí, ahora me dices que no.
Bueno, esto te viene, ahora después te voy a hacer un interrogatorio a ti, y si no me lo haces te voy a publicar con más fuerza que publicas tú, porque tenemos más fuerza que tú para publicar
ya lo
cosas.
sé, desde luego, fuerza y dinero mucho más.
No te quepa la menor duda.
Lo sé.
Hay influencia.
¿Estás amenazando, Ramón?
Vale, no, pero que no me vengas con historias. Vale. Pero si ves lo que pone ahí, digo al tipo que yo me comprometo a comprarle ese contenedor, pero a un precio inferior al de compra previo, porque había estado 3 meses ahí, en el puerto. Pero yo por bondad se lo compré. Mira, Andoni, para que lo sepas y te quepa ahí en la cabeza a partir de este momento. Puede ser una versión antigua, instigada por algún... ¿Cómo te diría? Cualquier palabra que use. Es decir, por cualquier delincuente que ha querido buscar su nicho aquí a través del fraude. Y esos que han intentado su nicho a través del fraude, pues están donde están. Es decir, en la miseria.
Ramón, yo respeto mucho tu opinión, la respeto. Ahora, yo sinceramente no creo que sean delincuentes toda la gente que yo he entrevistado. Y cambiando de Mali, por cambiar de Mali, y en Burkina Faso, ¿qué sucedió entonces? En Burkina Faso no se planta chufa.
Porque por abajo cuando más se realiza solo me enfoque añada en el faque bana añada en coro era bana ne era dam en el división.
Vamos a ir al baquera para acá na aunque hay la
En Burkina Faso no se paga.
Burkina Faso es todo una mentira. Hablamos del futuro. La trufa tiene un futuro increíble. Hay fondos internacionales que se han fijado en la trufa. Están con nosotros.
¿Fondos internacionales financieros te refieres o qué?
Fondos, los fondos en que invierten.
Bueno, en productos con futuro, obviamente.
Voilà, muy bien. Entonces, hay fondos americanos y europeos que han visto que la trufa pues es como la chía, el otro, ¿cómo se llama? El otro superfood, la quinoa. Hay israelitas que han venido a ensayar el cultivo hidropónico de la trufa.
Nosotros cumplimos todos los contratos que tenemos, verbales y escritos, siempre. Dicen que íbamos a comprar toda la trufa de Burkina, por supuesto, mañana, 2 contenedores. 2 contenedores para nosotros que son nada. Los proveedores que nos intentan estafar trabajan una vez y ya está. Se mandan piedras en contenedores de trufa para que pese más. Sí. Y no te creas que es fácil descargar una piedra de 2000 kilos de un contenedor y luego ver dónde la puedes colocar. Ya. Para poder comprender toda esta entrevista o todo este documental que quieres hacer, primero deberíais también intentar comprender la idiosincrasia y la forma de ser de las personas y de la gente de África del Oeste. Gracias a vosotros.
Muy bien, muy bien.
Y bueno,
yo le enseñaría a Antoni que vea ahí en el primer almacén, en el primero donde pone trufa con... ¿no? Vale.
Bueno.
Desclasificada, trufa desclasificada. Bueno.
We decided to interview another company we found at the Demeter stand. Demeter is the largest certification organization for biodynamic agriculture and one of 3 predominant organic certifiers in Europe.
We are making a documentary about superfoods. Did you feel that the demand is growing every year with the Tigernuts? Or
definitely, yeah. And it's a very positive trend. We just got one origin. It's from Nigeria.
Talk about the fair trade and this kind of thing.
We are not fair trade satisfied with that product so far because actually the clients didn't request it for that, so we didn't went for it.
Chocolate, coffee, Tigernuts. What is the good of labeling a product organic if it is collected by human beings in condition of semi-slavery? It was clear to me that in addition to the carbon footprint they leave behind, the mass consumer products imported from another continent, cheaper than local products, are probably the result of social injustice. I find it shocking that organic products can also suffer from social dumping, since ecological should always go hand in hand with fair trade. Maybe Europe should improve its control and traceability mechanisms to prevent certain companies claiming that their products are fair trade, when they are obviously unfair trade. European citizens have a right to know the origin and true conditions in which a product is produced, especially under the European Union labelling regulations, which are sometimes breached, at least in Spain. If Europe is not ready to act, maybe it is up to us as consumers to do so. I have begun to check the label when I buy something and ask questions about the origin and conditions in which the product was manufactured. Some shop assistants look at me with surprise, others with a certain disdain, and some as if I were from Mars or some other planet. Regardless of how we are perceived, it is up to us to openly question the origin of the products we buy. Anywhere, always, online, on social networks, on complaint forms. They make us believe that we can only vote every 4 years. Do not be fooled. We get to vote every day, every time we buy something. Buying a product from a small local business is not the same as buying it from a multinational. Even if you do buy in large chain stores, it is not the same when you buy products from one source or another, or with one kind of label or another. Not many can imagine the power we really have, or the impact that a single purchase of less than €1 can have on those near and far. Part 4. Mousso Faso. Burkina Faso means Homeland of the Wholehearted Men. The Mousso Faso Cooperative, or Homeland of the Wholehearted Women, was created in Ouagadougou as a fair trade organization that allows tigernut farming families to live with dignity. The statutes of the cooperative establish such basic things as the compulsory schooling of the sons and daughters of its members. It plans to invest in training adults, healthcare and infrastructure. We trust that when African tigernut buyers from the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, Australia, France, Italy, etc. know the whole story, they will consider working directly with cooperatives such as Mousso Faso. I hope so, because if people like Sulaima can feed and provide an education for their children, in the future, these will not need to risk their lives emigrating to Europe or joining radical jihadist groups. Or at least, that is what we wish to believe, because although you may feel angry after watching this documentary, as soon as you turn on your mobile phone and are bombarded by the stimuli of everyday living, there is a danger this conflict will be pushed to the back of your mind. If we do not demand fair trade products, the tigernuts being sold will continue to be tainted with blood. Be that as it may, the dream of Ousmane Sao, Justin Suguinda, and thousands of African families will rise from its ashes. Now all that remains to be seen is how the cartel of the Tigernuts of injustice is going to react. It is not going to be easy for the families that farm the Tigernuts. But then, they have never had it easy. They are used to fighting for every breath, walking on thorns, no matter what. Even if it is only for the length of this documentary, Mousso Faso has won.
There used a brain, used a hell halal. Jub jibah, some to dig and take some baram. Jub nice, some to dig and take some baram. Blue metiakul, baram bisahol. Then used a brain, used a hell halal. Jub jibah, some to dig and take some baram. So dig and take some baram.
Quand nous on est allé à Valence, Carion, il nous a cachés pendant 5 jours. Ils ont dit que si jamais les producteurs espagnols nous voient, ils vont nous attaquer.
Pues si me trobara a dos famílies o a unes famílies de llauradors africans que vingueren així de visita, pues a veure, li preguntaria pues, com ho cultiven, com reguen, com ho cullen, coses de llauradors que m'agradaria saber com ho fan. I com no, clar que sí, com tota reunió entre persones, la faria al costat de convidaria una paella.
You're walking day, back up and by all the time, you tell me time. But I wanna done ring, so Africa, then you belong. 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 Africa, then you belong.
L'actualité, c'est aussi cette polémique.
Aujourd'hui, le pois sucré du Mali, communément appelé djogon, n'est plus prisé sur le marché international. Il y a une campagne d'intoxication de la part d'un Espagnol appelé Ramon Carillon. Et les producteurs de pois sucrés demandent à l'État du Mali de mettre en application le mandat d'arrêt international à l'encontre de Carillon.
Au prix qu'ils veulent.
We got our Tigernuts from West Africa. So we sourced our Tigernuts from Burkina Faso from a female farming collective called Mousso Faso, which we discovered via their documentary.
Abada Beledon.